Hi, and welcome to this presentation from Family Network on Disabilities on preparing for disasters. This is part one of a four-part series that we're going to bring to you with loads of information that you're going to need for various disasters, how to prepare before, during, and what to do after. So give me just a minute. Let me introduce myself and I will get this presentation started. My name is Lisa Math. I am the director of the Family Star program here at Family Network on Disabilities. And let me get that presentation rolling. Hold on just a second. Great. So you should be able to see our first slide, which is the title of our presentation. Today, we're going to talk about prepare, purchase, and protect. Once again, I welcome you. I am Lisa Math. As I mentioned, I am the director of the Family Star program. I am also a parent of a young adult with special needs. So I've had to navigate quite a bit of the information that I'm going to be sharing with you today as I've prepared my family for numerous disasters over the years. A little bit about our organization. F&D is a 501c3 nonprofit. We operate throughout the state of Florida. We're funded in part by the U.S. Department of Education and the U.S. Department of Health through the Health Resources Services Administration. We use all of that grant dollar and funding that we get to provide information, resources, and support and training to families, educators, professionals, and providers throughout the state. And we do that at no charge to any of them. So we were founded in 1985 by a group of parents who had children with disabilities and really had no place to get support. So they came together in someone's living room and decided to start a small organization to support others. And that grassroots organization is now 37 years old and is state recognized as well as nationally recognized for the work that we do. What makes us unique is that we are a peer-driven organization and a family-driven organization. That means that from the very top, from our board of directors and our management team and leadership team and direct service staff, all of our people have experience either personally or with a loved one having special needs. So they know how to share and use compassion and empathy in the work that we're offering our families. I do need to qualify that we do not offer medical or legal or mental health advice. We are not doctors, legals, or doctors, attorneys, or clinicians, but we are here to offer you information, resources, training, and support. Again, as I mentioned, at no charge. So let's review the four parts of the series that I am going to be bringing to you. The first session, as I mentioned today, we're going to talk about prepare, purchase, and protect and what that looks like. Session number 2 is going to be creating a disaster supply kit. So you'll get a lot of the information you'll need to really collate all that stuff that you need to have in your home in case of a disaster. Session number 3, we're going to talk about evacuation and shelter planning, especially if you have a loved one in the home with special needs. And session number 4, we're going to talk about managing family and personal stress during and after a crisis. So preparing for a disaster saves lives, and we want to help you understand that. This workshop series will help you navigate the necessary steps to ensure the safety and well-being of you and your loved ones in times of various crises. Remember that preparation does save lives. Make sure everyone is included in the planning and creating of lists so that everyone's needs are being met before, during, and after a crisis. So here we go with session number 1. We are going to start at the beginning of how to know what you need to know. So when we plan for disaster, there are stages we need to think about. We're going to review all 3 of these stages of before, during, and after a crisis throughout this presentation. So the beginning, which is before a disaster, is time to prepare. And what does that look like? So being prepared beforehand is the best way to help children and family members stay calm during an event and even recover after the storms or a crisis. Hurricanes, especially, as in Florida, as we often know, are tracked for weeks before reaching land, which provides early warnings and time to prepare. And it's really critical that you use that time wisely. So in order to prepare, families should do many of the following things. First of all, be informed about your risk. So let's talk about hurricanes in this case. be aware of what the status of the hurricane is, how to access updated hurricane information, and whether your property is insured. Families should know their risk for flooding and best evacuation routes, what official radio stations and websites or social media will provide them with updates, and whether or not they have adequate flood insurance. Families should contact your community's emergency preparedness office if you have any members with ongoing health concerns that may need assistance during evacuations. And we'll talk about that in the evacuation section. So first, let's talk about hurricanes and how to differentiate in the preparation stage. So we often talk about hurricane watches and warnings. So a hurricane watch is a condition is possible for a hurricane to start in your area within the next 36 hours. The warning is a little more critical, meaning that hurricane conditions are expected to begin within 24 hours. And that is really not the time you want to be preparing. You want to be preparing even before a watch. You should have all of your supplies for storms, flooding, and hurricanes long before the season is in the middle of its worst times. There are also flood watches and warnings. Again, these are systems to let you know whether or not there's a possibility of flooding in the area within the next 12 to 36 hours. That's the watch. And a warning means that the land areas where there is coastal waters are expected to become or have already become flooded, and that you need to take action. The next thing is to assemble the necessary items, and that would include an emergency kit. Families should have access to enough water, food, and other emergency supplies for at least 3 to 7 days. I always think to plan for 7 days. Families should also include copies of important documents, radios with batteries, and supplies for children and pets. And we're going to go through all of that throughout this entire 4-part series. We want to actually include children in the planning stages as well, so that they feel like they know what's going on, they feel less scared about what's happening, and that they have what they need to support them. Next, you want to prepare your property. That means you should be trimming trees and shrubs and making sure you've cleaned out the garbage around your property, and anything that needs to be brought in is being brought in a timely manner. And you want to make a communication and emergency plan and review those with all members of the household in advance and practice evacuating if necessary. Where to start planning? Well, it seems overwhelming, but there is a really thorough process. And there are websites available that you can log into to find out how to do more planning. Go to your state emergency management sites or the federal government sites, CDC as well. They all have information on preparing for disasters. These are some of the areas that you will need to plan for, and we're going to review them in the upcoming slides. You want a list of items to purchase and gather that you already have in the house as well for your supply kit. You want to check your insurance coverage. You want to prepare your property. You're going to create that family plan and review it. You're going to make an emergency contact list. You're going to review your evacuation plan and know your zone. And then you're going to examine recovery options and the plan for after the disaster. So when we prepare on number 1 for the items to purchase and what you already may have, it's important to take a look around the home to see what you own and what could be used in the case of a crisis. For example, you may be able to fill your bathtubs with water instead of having to have so many bottles of water in the household. You may be able to use containers within the home or Ziploc bags to protect valuables. So there are things you can navigate within your own home. You want to gather those first, make the list of those, and then decide what needs to be purchased. What are some of the items you may need to purchase? And again, we'll be reviewing this in the disaster supply kit session, but I just want to review a little bit here. You, of course, are going to need water, and we'll go through that later on in the series. We're going to need food, first aid supplies, clothing, bedding, any type of emergency supplies and tools that you may need to do repairs around the home, and any items you might need for individuals that have any special needs, whether they're medical or physical. You want to make sure you have all those supplies in the house and available as needed. The second thing we talked about is checking the insurance plan that you have on your home. Make sure you know what your insurance policy specifies, including deductibles and timelines for filing a claim. You want to be aware that there is a time before the storm or an event where insurance companies will not write new policies or change existing policies. So you want to check on that deadline. Make sure you know that information before any type of crisis may be arising in your community, and that you can plan accordingly if you need to make adjustments to your insurance program. The next thing we need to do is prepare the property. What does that look like? Well, we're preparing both inside and outside the home. Inside, you want to protect valuables by covering them. That means you may need to put plastic over electronics, pick them up off the floor, put them up higher levels. You want to bring any valuable artwork and valuable knickknacks off of the floor and hide them in either airtight containers, or cover them well with plastic bags. You may need to cut trees around your property if they may be hitting on the roof. You may need to remove debris. So many times we overlook that we have empty pots and plants that have died and sitting around our properties, or you may have odds and ends that haven't been picked up around your area. That'll need to be removed. You want to clean any garbage and put it into containers. Make sure that those containers are brought indoors if you are actually preparing for a storm. You want to move outdoor furniture inside, any plants that you have outside that could be damaged by the storm. Of course, if you have a pool or any type of hot tub, any type of equipment for those as well need to be brought inside. You're going to want to put up shutters or any type of window coverings if you don't have hurricane-proof openings, and any type of loose objects outside. Maybe you have some decorative items on your property or garbage cans for garbage pickup or recycling. All of that will need to be moved in to prepare your property. Next, you're going to be creating that family plan. And again, we always want to do these far in advance of any type of crisis, especially far before hurricane season. So you make that plan with everybody in the household that will be impacted by the storm or the crisis or the flood. So you're going to want to establish a meeting time to sit down and iron out all the details of this plan, make sure everybody understands it. So here are some steps to creating that family plan. Step number one, you want to put together the plan by discussing 4 questions with your family, friends, or household to start this plan. First, how will I receive emergency alerts and warnings? So that means, how are you going to get that information? Is it going to be through radio or television? Do you need backup systems in place for that? Next, what is your shelter plan? If you need to evacuate into a shelter, have you investigated what your shelter options are? And if you have an individual with special needs or a pet, you may need to look into what shelters are available to accommodate their needs. We will address all of that in session 3 of this presentation. You also want to find out what your evacuation route is, because if you have to leave the area, you need to know which roads you will have access to. Many times the county will close down roads and filter traffic a certain way to get everybody out of the area. Make sure you know what those evacuation routes are going to look like. And then the 4th question is, what is this family communication plan? How are you going to get everybody on the same page? How are you going to let them know what the plans are? Are you going to use text messages or WhatsApp app or any of the other platforms out there to share this information? Step number 2 is consider the specific needs in your household. So as you plan, tailor this plan and the supplies that you'll need to purchase for your daily living needs and responsibilities. Discuss those needs and responsibilities and how the family members in your network are going to assist with each of those items. How are they going to help with communication, caring of children, businesses, pets, and any other durable medical equipment needs you may have. Create that network with the individuals who will need to have that information, and make sure everybody has a copy of this plan. Keep in mind several factors when developing this plan. Remember, you have different ages of the members of the household and what their needs are. What are going to be your responsibilities for assisting others during this crisis? Maybe you are helping neighbors as well. Are there specific dietary needs if you have family members that have specific issues with food that they need to have made available during this time? Are there medical needs that need to be purchased in advance, such as prescription or equipment that you need to have in the household? And what are the devices that you might need, especially if somebody is immobile or is on oxygen or has other types of equipment that they need to transport in case of an emergency or having to evacuate. Also remember, if you have pets or service animals, what their needs will be. And if you have school-aged children, how to accommodate them and keep them busy when this is going on. Step number 3 is to fill out the actual plan. So download forms from any site that has emergency information. You can use that template or you can create your own and save this plan to the cloud so you have access to it if you have to evacuate and don't have access to a computer. And finally, step 4, you want to practice this plan with everyone in your household because everybody has to be ready to do it immediately. And so there is no time to instruct everybody as to what has to happen during a crisis. So we need to really practice that in advance. So number 5 on that list we talked about is making an emergency contact list. Who do you need to include? So some of the people on that list should be people that are related to you, friends and neighbors, maybe work colleagues or school colleagues, doctors or therapy teams that you may be working with, Department of Health information, FEMA information, and any Red Cross information as well. You want to make sure you have names, addresses, and phone numbers for all of those contacts. Take it if you have to evacuate. Make sure you have copies, not only hard copies, but on the cloud and on your phone as well. There is a National Emergency Family Registry and Locator system that is available on benefits.gov site, and I'm going to show you what that looks like as well. So you go to benefits.gov and you look for the National Emergency Family Registry and Locator system. So what this does, it allows for you to put information in for loved ones if you have to evacuate. So if they cannot find you because communications have been cut off, it lets your contacts know where you are staying, where you have headed, and what your plans are. Really important asset that would be available to use, and it is free. The number 6 on our list is to review that evacuation plan. As I mentioned, you want to know where you may have to evacuate to. And evacuation orders are often given at the last minute when a crisis is going to happen. So if there's flooding or if there's a hurricane, there's going to be last minute notification and there will be little time to prepare. So you and your family really should know these routes in advance, have them planned and discuss them so that when you have to get on the road to leave the area, you know where you're going. Here are some tips. You want to go to floridadisaster.org and then look up your evacuation zone. You also want to plan evacuation options both within your region and outside of the region you live in, maybe even out of state. Sometimes, especially in the state of Florida, hurricanes can go right up the center of the state and impact the entire state of Florida. So you may actually have to leave the state. Make sure you have multiple options for evacuation from the area. You want to also monitor the opening of the shelters by the local officials, because once those open, you want to immediately go and head in that direction. And remember to reach out to the people you need to contact to let them know you have evacuated. If you need to arrange for a hotel or other place to stay, make these arrangements in advance of a storm hitting, because rooms are going to run out fast. And they have a limited number of rooms that are disability accessible or that will allow pets. So you're going to have to make sure you know your your hotel options. Hospitals are another option. Sometimes if you have individuals with special healthcare needs, you may be able to go to the hospital and stay to ride out the storm if that's the case. If you need assistance leaving your building because you live in a high rise, make sure you identify who will assist you. Remember, elevators may not be working at the point of the crisis hitting. So you want to make sure that you evacuate before that happens. If you rely on an auditory alert system to evacuate, make sure this is working and in place as soon as possible before the storm. Also, make sure you have contingency plans in case an electric wheelchair or scooter malfunctions. So you need your backup systems in place as well. If you cannot drive yourself, you may need to make arrangements for transportation. You need to pre-register for the emergency evacuation services in your community. Call your local transportation provider. Again, you should be able to find that on your local FEMA sites or Department of Health sites, and make those reservations in advance if necessary. You want to make sure you're sharing your evacuation plans with all the individuals in your home, household, and family or friends or work that need to know. Finally, if you have pets, especially if you have guide dogs or dogs that are assistance dogs, service animals, you want to make sure that you are making plans for them as well. Especially if you have to evacuate, you have to know that the shelters will be able to accommodate them, or if you are going into another home or a hotel, that they can accommodate them as well. And we'll talk about what you'll need to pack for them as well. Remember, service animals and guide dogs must accompany their owners at all times during a disaster, and they are allowed by law in general shelters and special needs shelters and hotels and anywhere that owner travels. Even though you're not required, you may want to bring with you any copies of the animal certification and training, so that if anybody questions if it's a service animal or guide dog, that you have that information readily available. Make sure that you are carrying sufficient cash, and you want to get that in advance because many ATMs may not be functioning right before a storm or during a storm. You also want to make sure whatever vehicle you need to use to evacuate, that you are checking that vehicle in advance, making sure the tires have air in them, that it's full tank of gas, that you've checked the oil and done servicing on that before any crisis evacuation occurs. And then finally, you'll want to collect all your important records, including medical records, school records, wills, insurance policies, prescriptions, etc., and put them in a waterproof container that you can readily access if you need to evacuate. And number 7 is examine recovery options after the storm passes. So if you have evacuated, when is it safe to return home? You're going to need to rely on news reports, friends, and neighbors to let you know what the best information is about your community. Did your home sustain damage and it needs to be repaired beforehand? So you'll need to find that out as well. Who will make the arrangements and be responsible for those repairs if you've evacuated the area? So you'll need to set that up as well. Your home may be without power or water for an extended period of time, so make sure you have a backup plan once the storm has passed. When you do return home, be aware of safety issues. There may be debris in roadways, and roads may be unmarked and unfamiliar because the landmarks are gone. So you want to make sure you know where you're going and have a map or have access to Google Maps. And also look out for downed power lines. And remember, police and fire rescue may be limited access at that time. And then once you have assessed your situation and you're able to return, you may be able to apply for assistance to replace what has been lost and start the process of recovery. So before the event is when you want to start purchasing the things that you'll need. You want to make a list of those items you already need, as we talked about, and go ahead and purchase them and stockpile them for the whole season, possibly hurricane season or flood or tornado season. So where do we begin? Of course, we know we need food and water. I mentioned 3 to 7 day supply. I really like to lean towards the 7 days. I've actually been through hurricanes where I had no power for 10 days. So I really want to make sure that I have at least a week. And by that time, most grocery stores are back up and running and you can access them for additional supplies. You want to make sure you're storing non-perishable foods that are edible and can last for a long time. Things like ready-to-eat canned meats, canned fruits, dried fruits, nuts, peanut butter or other butters that are for people that have allergies to nuts, canned vegetables, snacks of all types, and instant beverages as well. Remember, you may not have water and you may not have electricity. You want to remember, because of no refrigeration, that all of the foods you're going to need to buy have to be able to be shelf stable. And because you want to be able to prepare them either on a grill or a sterno, make sure you purchase sterno and matches as well. Regarding water, keep at least a week's supply of water per person, meaning 2 quarts for drinking, 2 quarts for food preparation and sanitation. You will need to use that for the toilet. So that means probably a gallon of water per day per person. And you want to store this for no longer than 6 months. Actually, most plastic bottled water actually has a shelf life. So you want to check the expiration date on that water. If it's no longer drinkable, use it to water your plants. If you purchase that water bottle, keep it in this sealed container until you need to use it, and make sure you use it by the use by date. And then remember to include water for pets and baby formula if necessary, because you're going to have to create that if there is no running water as well. Okay, household items and tools. Some of the suggested items, this is just a short list, but I encourage you to go on to those websites that I mentioned and get as thorough a list as possible. So here are the items you may need. Paper cups, plates, and plastic utensils. You may not have water to wash things. Cash and credit cards, non-electric can opener and a utility knife, pliers, screwdriver, hammer, crowbar, assorted nails, and wood screws, because you may have to do some short-term repairs when you return. Shut-off wrench to turn off household gas and water supply. Tape such as duct tape. Compass, because you may lose sight of directions with no street signs. You want to have matches, especially in a waterproof container, or lighters. You'll need aluminum foil, plastic storage containers, a signal flare. You want paper and pencil or pens, needles and thread in case you have to sew some tarps together, adhesive labels, safety goggles, work gloves, a whistle in case you need to signal for help, heavy rope, a patch kit or a can of seal in air for tires, disposable dust masks, plastic sheeting. And again, I encourage you to go on those websites to get a more complete list of some of the items you may need to pack. So the pet supplies obviously are going to be based on what kind of pet you have, but some of the things to think about are food, extra water bottles, leash and a harness, collar, identification tags, medications, vaccination and medical records, and a carrier or cage, 1 per animal. Some of the emergency supplies and first aid supplies you're going to need include sterile adhesive bandages in various sizes, safety pins, something to clean the wound with, and soap, gloves for if there is an open wound, sunscreen, gauze pads, bandages, scissors, adhesive tape, tweezers, a needle, moist towelettes, antiseptic, rubbing alcohol, and a thermometer. And of course, again, I encourage you to go to those websites to check for more information. Now, when we talk about medical supplies, this is also going to be very specific to your situation if you have an individual with special needs. So we think about that as well, and prepare these for in advance and have them in the home. So things to think about are aspirin or non-aspirin pain relievers, antidiarrheal medication, antacid for an upset stomach, syrup of Ipecac, which is good for poisoning. If somebody accidentally ingests poison, you can induce vomiting by that and call the poison control center immediately. You may need a laxative, heart and high blood pressure medications, prescription drugs, denture supplies, lenses for contacts or glasses, a cooler and chemical ice packs for storing and keeping medications, toiletries, a walker, wheelchair, equipment, and cane, and of course, a backup battery for anything that requires electricity. So when is the time to protect? Before you begin a storm or an event is when you really need to protect your valuables and your documents. And we're going to go through both of these now. You want to take originals and or photocopies, depending on which is more valuable to have and necessary. You might want to leave some of the originals in a safe deposit box so they are protected. But some of the documents you should have on you are valid driver's license or ID, passport or proof of residency or citizenship, social security card, immunization records, birth or death certificates, marriage license, baptismal records, lease agreements, utility bills, deeds, titles to either cars or homes, mortgage payment books, property tax bills, real property insurance with your name listed, real estate property insurance, make, model, and serial numbers for durable medical equipment, a paycheck stub, social security disability information, income tax documents, bank statement, debit cards, checking and savings accounts information, all your passwords, the front and back pictures of credit cards, all your insurance policies, including home, auto, and life, health insurance cards, and prescription plan cards as well. And again, this is not a complete list. All of this information can be found on those websites. What about valuables? So for those things that you cannot take with you, you want to cover them with plastic or tarps and put them up off the ground. That includes artwork, electronics, jewelry, any valuable items you may have on display, any type of books that are valuable, or any type of wedding albums and things like that as well. What to do during an event. So there are many things to think about when we are going through a crisis. Knowing what to do during that event can help you feel more in control and take steps to increase your safety. Parents and caregivers should consider the following when responding, especially like a hurricane where we have a hurricane watch. We want the family to start being aware of the situation and become informed about the upcoming alerts and weather updates. Make sure that all your emergency supplies are updated and start implementing your preparedness plans. Activities should have already started, if not been completed. You want to monitor the risk for the need to evacuate at this point. You should follow all those local instructions from authorities. You should consider evacuating if you live in an area prone to flooding, or if you have a family member who may be impacted by the lack of extended electricity outages. During the evacuation, you should gather all your emergency kit supplies, all your loved ones, and all your pets in the car if you're going to evacuate during a storm or at the beginning of a storm. If you're sharing transportation, identify the pickup areas, make sure the route and the location is safe. Families should also communicate with someone outside of the storm area to let them know where they're going. You again are seeking updated information on evacuation conditions. Always be checking during a storm. Want to make sure that everything on your property has been secure, including making sure the animals have been brought inside if you are staying in your property. Obviously, know your shelters if you need to evacuate to a shelter, and we're going to talk about that in the part 3 session on evacuation and shelter planning. You can also go to American Red Cross Shelter Finder as well. And then stay evacuated, monitor the risk until you know more about the storm and weather or the event and whether it has passed. If you are staying in place, remember to keep alert about the storm updates. Make sure that you are watching and monitoring your food and water supplies. Be prepared to evacuate as soon as possible if needed. You also, during an event, want to be monitoring children's behavior. Make sure that you're staying calm so they can model that behavior. Provide simple but accurate information in a calm voice to them. Encourage them to stay busy and distract them. And practice self-care as well, so they see that you are calm and taking care of your feelings as well. So the event has passed, whether it's a storm or a flood or whatever the other crisis could be, a tornado. And the length of the time it's going to take for you to return back into your community may depend on how bad the storm or the event has hit and what the community services have been lost. Realize this is going to be a frightening time for everyone, and you really need to be aware and be sensitive to this. Some families are going to be able to return to normal very quickly, while others may be without their home or services to their home and may need to find medical care. So, or may even have to move to a different community. So we have to be aware of that. Also keep in mind, somebody may have died or been injured or may have lost an animal in the event. So we have to be cognizant of that. Children may be uprooted from their regular schedules. They may not have school for a while. So we have to be cognizant of how to support those needs as well. When you're going back out into the community, be aware of dangerous situations like puddles of water, because there may be down power lines there. Trees may be fallen down. There may be debris on the sidewalks. So you really want to be careful as you're navigating your community. And immediately after, assess what damage has happened to your property, home, and vehicles. It's important that you immediately contact your insurance company, document everything, and file a claim. It takes time to process, and probably you will be one of hundreds that will be filing claims at that time. So it will take quite a lengthy time to get through and to repair. You also want to remember to make sure your children and pets are safe in the community once you return or venture back out. Again, have to watch the kids for going out in the community to play. If there are safety concerns, you want to make sure that they're monitoring you're monitoring their activity and behavior, making sure that they're stable and not having emotional responses to what they've been through, and if necessary, getting help for them. If children are starting to complain a lot about not feeling well, that's a sign they may be having some emotional disturbance as well. So you want to take that very seriously. You want to also make note if you're seeing changes in their schoolwork or the way that they are performing their chores at home. That's another sign that things are not going well. Children's functioning and recovery are going to be influenced by how the parents or caregivers respond to the recovery as well. They're going to look for you for comfort, information, and support. And we want to help them as best we can. So here are some suggestions. Model how they can handle stressful situations. Provide accurate but age-appropriate information. They don't need to have the entire story about what has happened, just enough information to calm them and make them understand that they are now safe. Answer their questions appropriately and honestly as best you can. Give them some time to process what they've been through. They may withdraw a little bit, but that's okay too. Keep family routines as regular as possible, even in this phase of disruption, because the more regularity and comfort they can find, the safer they'll feel and the better they'll respond. You want to monitor the media and the social media that everybody is exposed to. There'll be a lot of horrific stories that will be shown on those platforms, and we really don't need family members to be exposed to that on a regular basis. And then if necessary, seek additional help if you're seeing that your loved ones or your children are finding it difficult to cope with the changes. Remember to take time for your family and your community, because it's going to be a process. It's not going to happen and things are not going to go back to normal quickly. So I want to close with this expression that was by Benjamin Franklin, and it was very, very helpful in this environment. I believe that by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. The best way to get through a crisis, whether it be a storm or a community event, is to make sure that you have all of your preparation done in advance so that you feel secure and ready to handle the situation and not put additional burden and stress on you and your loved ones. So with that, I just want to close with a little bit of information about Family Network on Disabilities. So as you can see here, we have several departments. We have POP and PSN and PEN. Those are the 3 parent training information centers throughout the state. Each one of them has a territory as shown on the graphic, and they support families that have children in the school districts throughout the state that may need additional support or have special needs. They work through the U.S. Department of Education and have offer support and training and information at no charge to those families. The Family Star program is the one that I am in charge of, and that one supports families through the age of 26 with any type of complex medical condition, special healthcare need, complex developmental disability, or mental health challenge. And we also have a special needs trust department, and we work with families that may need to create a special needs trust. And we work with fathers as well through our Dadvocate programs. Here are the links to our informational portal on all of the social media platforms and our website. And we have a whole host of downloadable resources in multiple languages to help support you as you navigate the school system, the medical health system, and the mental health system. I encourage you to go on our website. We also have FND University, where you can use modules to learn more about the systems of care so that you can advocate for your loved one with a disability. And finally, this is how you can reach our office to get additional free support. Our 800 number is 800-825-5736. Give us a call and let's see if we can help support you and your loved ones, not only at times of crisis, but at general times when you just have questions to support the family's journey that you are navigating. So I want to thank you for joining me today. I wish you all the best, and I hope you'll join us for part 2 of Preparing for Disasters. Thank you again.